Good afternoon and welcome along. It's time for the big 2024 preview, and that can mean only one thing, and that's the fact that the MotoGP World Championship will be roaring back into life pretty much exactly this time next weekend. Friday, around 15 minutes ago, we'll have had the opening practice session of the Premier Class season getting underway under the lights. Well, not under lights just yet. Later on, it will be under the lights at the Losail International Circuit in Qatar. And to preview what is going to be a mouth-watering season ahead of us, 21 GPs, including 21 races and 21 sprints. It is going to be a fascinating campaign. And as I said, all kicks off this time next week in Qatar. The big 2024 preview is here. And we've got a big hour ahead of us as we go through all 5 factories, all 11 teams, all 22 riders. What are their hopes and expectations ahead of a big season? As you can see, it comes thick and fast after that opening round of the year, all the way through to the German Grand Prix, where we have our summer break. And then once again, as we were used to last year, it's a frantic sprint finish to the end before round 21 in Valencia in the middle of November, where the big question is, will Pecco Bagnaia be celebrating a hat-trick of MotoGP World titles, or will we see another name on the World Championship? Potentially a new one. Potentially, we might see a returning name, the likes of Marc Marquez, Fabio Quartararo and Joan Mir, of course, all looking to try and snatch that World Championship away from the Italian. As ever, during our live streams, if you've been with us for the previous 11, as we did all of the team presentations, this is for you. We want you to get in touch, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, whatever it might be. Get in touch with us via the chat. Put your questions in for our guests. Put your comments in. How do you think that your favourite riders, your favourite teams are going to do this year? We want your opinions as well as we go throughout the next hour. And of course, as I said, MotoGP roaring back into life this time next week. So no better time, no better opportunity for you after our preview is done to go to motogp.tickets.com and grab your seat, including for the opening round in Qatar or maybe for round 2 in Portugal as well. 10% off all tickets for Portimao at the moment if you want to experience that electric atmosphere with what feels like half of Portugal cheering on their home hero Miguel Oliveira. Of course, he's got a little bit to try and fight back on after what happened last year. There's definitely fire in the belly, I would imagine, for Miguel Oliveira. Excited to see how that one unfolds. But let's crack on with the show then. We've got 2 big guests lined up. The first of which, the voice of MotoGP, a man that is getting ready for, I won't say how many seasons in the paddock, but it's a few by now. Our very own Matt Birt. Great to be with you, Matt. Looking forward to the new year, I imagine.
Yeah, great to be here, Jack. Yeah, I can't quite believe it, mate. This is going to be my 29th season in MotoGP. Where has that time gone? I guess it's what they say, don't they? Time flies when you're having fun. Super excited. Can't wait to get going next weekend. As you mentioned, Jack, special year for MotoGP, the 75th anniversary, and this one should be an absolute blockbuster. So many stories. So many great riders on great bikes fighting it out. And it's going to be a tough one to call. It should be an unpredictable season, but cannot wait to get going next week.
I know there's a lot of people at home now thinking, wow, Matt Birt did his first year in the paddock at just 7 years of age. And you're right as well. Don't put the numbers together. Don't do the maths. But not only have we
and a lot more hair then, that's for sure.
Yeah. Not only have we got Matt with us, but also we want to get the thoughts and the opinions of 5-time world champion, MotoGP legend, Jorge Lorenzo. Delighted to have Jorge with us. Good afternoon. How are you? Looking well?
Hi guys, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Jorge. How excited are you for this big year ahead of us, 2024? There's so many storylines. It looks as though it's going to be one to remember.
Yeah, I think it's the best part of the season because everyone is expecting this to start to understand how is the level of everyone, and it's very exciting. It's very exciting this pre-season, before the first race, and to see that the rookies, especially Pedro Acosta, who make a very good lap times in the pre-season, especially in Sepang, and to see Marquez with the Ducati. There are these two big things going on before the starting of the season.
This time of year, did you enjoy the tension, the excitement, or did you just want to get on the bike and get started?
Well, I think it's a good compromise, to have 3 or 4 months of at the beginning of vacation and then start working to build up the physical condition and to test in some tracks the bike already on the winter. I think was a good compromise. Less or more will be worse. I think was good to have this month. So it was very important, the preparation to be in shape, to arrive in shape at the first race, but not too much burn, because sometimes some riders train that hard that when they arrive into the first race, they were already to burn, inside, mentally and physically. So it's enough. It's good to have the compromise for this,
Okay, so let's get started with our big preview then. There's only one place to start as well, and that is with the world champion Francesco Bagnaia, of course. Once again, a part of the Ducati Lenovo team. Back-to-back world championships, and he's started the season, or pre-season should I say, in pretty fine form, smashing the lap records in both Malaysia and in Qatar as well. So the obvious question for you guys at home, and for our guests as well, can anyone stop Pecco Bagnaia in 2024? Yes. Do you think that someone out there can stop him from making it 3 World Championships in a row? Or no? Will it be 3 titles in a row for the Italian? First, to you, Bertie, in terms of pre-season preparation, it really couldn't have gone much better for Bagnaia.
I think the phrase, Jack, is perfect Pecco. I mean, he's been absolutely phenomenal in winter testing. As you just mentioned, what did he do? A 150.9 in Qatar, well inside the lap record, a 156.6 in Sepang. I mean, these are lap times of a guy that's just oozing confidence. He's taken so much belief from the last 2 years, winning the championship in 2022, defending it in 2023. We know he's super happy with that GP24. It looks like they've done an amazing job. G. Delinea and the engineers back in Bologna. He's talked about how he's got that feeling back, particularly the braking zone with the new bike. And we saw him in the latter part of last year struggle to stop the Ducati. But you have to say, what we've seen so far from Pecco in winter testing has been absolutely phenomenal. He has been sensational. I mean, talk about throwing down a marker for his rivals to go into the new season. It's going to take something special to prize that number 1 plate away from him, because he is clearly the reference rider in MotoGP right now, and he's confident, he's fast, and that's a pretty ominous combination for his rivals going into that first race.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Jorge, would you go along with that? I mean, normally we see in pre-season testing that the new bikes, the latest models that the factories bring, can take some time to really get the most out of them. But Pecco seems to have gelled with this 2024 Ducati straight away.
Yeah, you know, I think Pecco is that kind of rider who is like a robot, similar to how I was when I was competing. They need everything going perfect to feel strong, and when they feel strong, they are unbeatable. So I think these 2 world titles that he won made him believe much more in himself, and now that his confidence is in the sky. He has a very strong confidence in himself. He knows the bike perfectly, because from 2019 it's like 5 years with the same bike. He made the evolution in the last few years of the new Ducati. So Ducati take his notes to create the bike with his riding style. So this is very important. But especially, as I told you, Pecco needs to feel he's important on the team, to feel he has everything in a perfect situation, and then he demonstrated on the track. So that's what he did in the preseason. Now try to show the rest of the rivals that he's still the best, he's still the number 1, to make them put the head down and don't show up or improve their confidence. So I think his strategy was perfect. But now is the time for racing, and we know that time for racing, we can see a Jorge Martin who made the pole position and start very good at the beginning of the race. We can see Marquez who never give up, and he will try always to be in the front, because he's like a bulldog. And for sure, Bastianini feels better with this new bike, 2024 bike, than he was with the 2023. For sure, the KTM will be there, Aprilia. So many incognites that we need to discover. But of course, Pecco is the favorite, I believe.
Nearly 80% of the viewers at home at the moment think that Pecco can be stopped this year. Do you think anyone can stop him? And secondly as well, he's won back-to-back World Championships, first fighting off Fabio Quartararo. Last year was able to withstand so much pressure from Jorge Martin and bounce back from that big crash in Barcelona. Does Pecco get the credit you think that he deserves?
Yeah, now the people understand and knows that Pecco is one of the best, one of the favorites. He has a lot of talent. And as I told you, when everything is in his control, he's able to be unbeatable in some tracks. So he's very strong. He already is 2 times world champion. So, but anyway, this is MotoGP, and they are the best of the riders of the planet. And especially with Marquez with the best bike, maybe not the best bike because he will not have the 2024 bike, but the 23, and this can be a key this year because looks like the 24 Ducati improved a lot, but still with the best company bike, let's say, and with Bastianini who will fit better, and Jorge Martin who wants to become world champion for the first time, for sure will not have an easy job. But we cannot deny that Pecco is one of the strongest, and for me at the moment, till someone make the opposite, is the favorite.
So the favourite for you, we'll come to your final predictions just before we let you go later in the show. From Bagnaia, let's switch our attention to his teammate Enea Bastianini, Bertie, because as last year has been well documented, a year to forget, a crash at the opening rounds and took his time to come back to full fitness. And then from there, once he did return, another crash in Barcelona. And it was only on one round all year that we saw what Enea Bastianini is all about. But once again, just like Pecco Bagnaia, potentially even more important than Bagnaia, Bastianini has made a really, really strong start to 2024 throughout pre-season.
Yeah, bang on, Jack. Absolutely. I mean, he's looked mustard in winter testing. Top 3 in Sepang, top 3 in Qatar. We know that both of them are good tracks for Enea. He's won MotoGP races at both of those circuits, but it's just great to see the beast back, isn't it? You know, in full attack mode. Everything that seemed to or could have gone wrong last year for Enea in the first part of the season did go wrong. As you mentioned, the injury in Portimao, then it was a long, long recovery from that fractured right shoulder blade. He didn't really click at all. Lots of problems getting the bike into the corner, which was such a strong point in 2022 when he won those 4 Grand Prix. And there was so much for Enea to cope with, the distractions about whether he'd be moved out of the Ducati team and to make way for Jorge Martin. So I think if he's got a clear mind, clearly he's fast, he's healthy. And as Jorge mentioned, he likes his GP24. I think pre-season he said it feels like there's been gains in every corner. Once again, compliments to the Ducati engineers, the amazing job we've done. But yeah, Enea looks like he's going to be back on it. I think he's admitted himself. It seems at the moment, looking at the data, Pecco has just got that slight edge on him. But I'm sure over the course of the season, it's going to be a pretty intense dogfight inside that factory Ducati garage. And a lot of things at play, not just on track for Enea this year, of course. He needs the results as well to keep that seat in the factory team next year. There's only 3 riders who've got contracts next season. It's going to be a proper scrap, a proper fight for who's going to be Pecco Bagnaia's teammate in 25 and beyond. But it looks like a year of redemption for Enea, and so far, so good for the Italian.
Yeah, and that's what we want to see as well. Of course, in 2022, that those battles between himself and Bagnaia were absolutely gripping, whether it be Malaysia, Misano, Aragon. So fingers crossed we can see that once again in 2024. You speak about the runners and riders to be Bagnaia's teammate in 2025. Well, Jorge, is this man the favourite at the moment? Second in the World Championship last year. He dominated Saturdays, whether it be qualifying or in particular the new sprint format. Jorge Martin is definitely going to be full of enthusiasm and energy to try and win that first World Championship this year.
Yeah, for sure. Jorge make a big step forward from 2022 to 2023. He prepared himself much more to be stronger. He worked a lot in the pre-season of the last year, and he demonstrated on the track. He was much more consistent. He didn't have these up and downs that pursued him for the first 2 years in MotoGP. He's runner-up. He fight till the last race for the championship. I think he couldn't get it because the experience, and maybe he was so emotional or so hot, so a little bit overconfident, especially, for example, in Indonesia Grand Prix, where he crashed when he was leading with 3 seconds advantage. So in some circumstances, still he need to find out the way to keep more calm and to be more cold and don't be so hot, because one little mistake can cost you many points and can make you lose the championship. So if he learn to manage this situation, he can be very dangerous for Pecco this year and for the rest of the riders.
It's a big year for contracts. Just quickly, Jorge, before we move on to Franco Morbidelli. At this current moment, Jorge Martin, do you think the favourite to move into that factory team alongside Pecco Bagnaia?
I think Ducati have the power here because they have 7-8 riders very competitive, and they already signed Aldeguer for 4 years. So the power now that have Ducati, because the speed and the talent of the 5, 6, 7 riders that they have is very equal. So they have much options to choose. So for sure, Jorge will need to demonstrate that he can dominate the races and the championship to be able to convince Ducati that he's the man to be a teammate. If Ducati is not so clear and Jorge and his manager make ultimatum to Ducati, maybe Ducati will choose another rider. So he needs to demonstrate on the track that he's much faster than Pecco and the rest of Ducati drivers. So like this, Ducati will have no doubts, I believe.
Maybe you know more than us, Jorge. Was that Aldeguer to Ducati for 4 years? Is that insider information?
This is what I see in the news yesterday.
Oh, you're reading it like all of us then. From Martin Berti to. Well, I don't think it's not been made official just yet, but it does sound like that is due to happen.
Yes, in Ducati, first in Pramac and then maybe in the official team. No, it's not right.
Well, I don't know, Bertie. That's the first time I've read that. I knew that there is a lot of talk that he's apparently signed up with the Prima Pramac Racing squad for next year, but there was no talk of contract length. But that's for 2025.
I wrote. I see for 4 years. So maybe I was wrong.
Maybe it could be 4 years. We'll get to Qatar next weekend and ask for you, Jorge. Don't worry, we'll get the news. From Martin to Morbidelli, and we've spoken about 3 riders there who have had great pre-seasons, have done lots of laps, feel very, very ready for the start of the campaign. And unfortunately for Frankie Morbidelli, it is the complete opposite, Bertie. Not a single lap completed so far in 2024. What a huge task he's got ahead of him at the start of the year.
Massive, Jack. I mean, straight away, in what is a massively important year for Frankie Morbidelli, trying to turn over a new leaf in his career after a difficult couple of years at Yamaha, already playing catch up. You know, he had one day on the Ducati in Valencia. It was very windy. It was very cold in late November. You know, he's lost so many important things, not just to get accustomed to the bike, but to spend time with the team, gelling with the team and understanding how they work. You know, that's a big factor that you work out in pre-season. We saw Enea Bastianini, he struggled with that at the start of 2023. It was just the worst possible way for Frankie to kick off this year. The severe concussion that he had when they were riding production bikes in Portimao, it was bad enough for him to be ruled out of Sepang, and then to find out that the doctor said, you know, we advise you not to test as well in Qatar because another bang on the head would not be a good thing. So going in pretty much cold, Jack, you know, with no testing whatsoever, immediately it puts you at a huge disadvantage because, okay, yeah, that these guys haven't been racing, but they're already dialed in. They're already up to speed. They already know their bikes, even the new guys, whereas Frankie's had just one day and a handful of laps in Valencia. And as we mentioned, this was a year where he was trying to turn over a new leaf and show the world that the old Morbidelli magic is still there, which I'm sure it is. But yeah, what a brutal way to kick off the year for Frankie. Let's just hope that he's okay. He'll be able to ride the bike next week in Qatar, and we will see him back to his best because I think he will be able to deliver some strong results in that GP24. But yeah, nightmare start of the year for Frankie.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Still waiting for the final confirmation that he is going to be in Qatar. And you do wonder whether the team just say, let's not look at the timesheets at all this weekend. Let's just use it as a test to get you ready. Right, from Prima Pramac Racing to Grassini Racing. And this is a team that is going to have a lot of eyes on it this year, a lot of media speculation. Not only have they got Alex Marquez, but now brother Marc Marquez in the fold as well. A question for you guys at home, because it's one that people were talking about. Was Marc Marquez sandbagging throughout pre-season? Did we see the real Marc Marquez on a Ducati throughout pre-season? For you guys at home, vote yes if you think that Marc was maybe just keeping a little bit in reserve. No, if you think that those testing results where we saw him finish 6th in Sepang, 4th in Qatar, was the true Marc Marquez. Jorge, what do you think? Have we seen the real Marc on the Ducati, or is he keeping his cards close to his chest?
Well, after the first day in Valencia, his debut on the Ducati, that was so impressive. Everyone was thinking that Marc will win almost all the races, but I don't think it's going to be like this, as we saw in Sepang. That he have some difficulties, and I have some question mark with Marc this year. No, the first one is how much time he will need to fully understand the Ducati. That looks like he still didn't completely understand the way to ride the bike. Still, he's riding a little bit like he was riding the Honda, as the conversation with Pecco show. And the other question mark, or the second question mark, should be how much difference between Ducati 2023 and Ducati 2024 will be. How much Ducati evolve their bike in just 1 year? Because if the difference is quite big, Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia, they are not bad riders. They are one of the best, and they are very explosive and fast. And if they have a better bike than Marc, who also doesn't have experience with the Ducati, this could be very important key. And the third question mark will be his physical condition, his arm. His arm is fully recovered, or still needs some time to get into the maximum, or he will never be the same, physically speaking, like before. This is my third question mark that I have with Marc, that he only knows, and his personal team knows, no?
Birt, it seems that as time has gone on, people have sort of shifted away from the idea of Marc winning the World Championship this year. When the deal was first signed, I remember the press room was a buzz of, well, we might as well not turn up next year. Marc on a Ducati, it's already a foregone conclusion. But now, with the season a week away, I think a few people are predicting that Marc might not be world champion this year. How do you see things at the moment?
Yeah, guilty, Jack. Hands up on that one. I was in that group that was kind of like, yeah, Marc on a Ducati, it's got the potential for him to absolutely run right on the best bike probably in MotoGP history. You know, Marc's been very realistic, hasn't he, I think, in winter testing. He's been desperate to play down expectations. You know, he's done a great job of fanning the flames, dousing the flames about expectation and what he could possibly achieve. But this is Marc Marquez. We're talking about a guy who's one of the best to ever throw his leg over a motorcycle. You know, Jorge knows the strengths of Marc. I think it's Cruci Frankie Carcetti said, didn't he, that it's probably going to be 3 or 4 Grand Prix as Marc gets himself bedded in, fully understands what he needs to get the best out of the Ducati, fully understands how he's got to adapt his own riding style to suit the Desmos Adichie going forward. But when Marc does click, there's going to be fireworks. There always is. This is Marc Marquez. You know, I think it shows how tough and high the level is in MotoGP right now. You know, Marc's trying to break 11-year-old habits that he had at Honda. You know, he's not riding on instinct clearly at the moment, but the signs were positive. I was keeping a close eye on those timesheets, and when he really did push for the first time hard, taking risks in Qatar, he was, 3/10 away from your Bagnaias and your Bastianini. So he is coming. He just needs that little bit of time. I think Jorge, though, made a great point. What could be key for Marc this year is that differential between last year's bike, which was an amazing bike, and the GP24, because the GP24 was rolled out of Bologna immediately, super fast, super competitive. And if that gap grows, well, even a rider of Marc's talent might find it difficult to bridge that gap. But it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it is. As we head to Qatar, then those are the big three question marks. Go on, Jorge.
Another question is, will Ducati, if Marc is very strong at the beginning of the season, will Ducati give him a 2024 bike?
Well, what do you think? Because we normally, obviously, you can't get the 24 engine, but we've seen throughout the years that there'll be an aerodynamics update, other small updates filtering through from the factory team. If Marc is winning, can you see?
I don't know if this is allowed. I don't know if this is allowed for on the rules to change the bike.
So they're not allowed to change the engine. The engine specification will remain the same, but the aerodynamics, you can upgrade once during the year, and normally that's what happens. But I don't know. What do you think? If you're in charge of Ducati and Marc is winning races?
The chassis and the aerodynamics, maybe they are able to give them the spec 2024. We will see.
We will see. There's lots of question marks. It makes it very interesting.
The politics will be very important.
Always. The political side of the game is what fascinates me just as much as the sporting side. Jorge, just before we move on from Gresini Racing, it's going to be a big year on the other side of the box for Alex Marquez as well. He finished the year in good form, had a great weekend in Malaysia, and throughout pre-season, he's been faster than Marc at one, just behind him at the other. It looks as though Alex has really raised his level coming into this year.
Yeah, there is always this common belief that Marc is quite more fast and more talented rider than his brother. This is the common belief of the paddock, no? But honestly, Alex, when he's strong and when he feels strong, he's able to do very, very good races and fight for victories and for podiums, for pole positions. He knows more the bike than his brother Marc does, so this for sure will be a key. And he's younger than Marc, so his capacity to improve and to get better maybe is a little bit more than his brother. So we will make a really nice competition between brothers, and I'm sure Alex can make Marc's life difficult in some tracks during this year. So don't put away Alex Marquez for one of the riders who can win races this year.
9th in the World Championship last year, 177 points. You'd imagine he's going to be looking to try break into the top 6 and that 200-point mark as well. From Gresini to VR46, and this is another fascinating inter-team battle, Bertie. Marco Bezzecchi, of course, had a breakout year last year, finishing 3rd in the World Championship, but he looks as though he's going to be pushed right from the off by new boy Fabio Di Gianantonio.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried for Bez, actually, after the first test in Sepang, Jack, because he clearly didn't click with the GP23 as quick as what we expected him to, and certainly what he expected to himself. I think Marco's strong point last year was in the braking zone, maybe a little bit different geometry, a little bit different weight distribution with the GP23, and Sepang was quite tough. But with experience, the team have clearly looked at data and they found something in the Qatar test, which meant Marco was close to the front. But it will be interesting to see how Marco approaches this year, because he was the massive improver last year. 14th in his rookie season in the championship to 3rd overall, big surprise contender for the championship. I'm sure Marco's goal, obviously, goes without saying, is to have another great season, but keep himself in that championship battle for a little bit longer. But I think he's going to have, as Jorge mentioned, he'll have the same kind of headaches, the same concerns as Marc Marquez will be about that gap between the GP23 and the GP24. And at the back of his mind as well, that it's an old cliche, the first person you want to beat is always your teammate. And we have to say, Fabio Di Gianantonio was quicker than Marco in both winter tests so far. It looks like Digio was able to make that transition over to the GP23 are that little bit faster, that little bit smoother. We know that Di Giannantonio was phenomenal in Qatar last year. It's a great place for the season to start, isn't it, for Digia? Because he was absolutely awesome, second in the sprint and winning the Grand Prix last November. But it's not a given that Bezzecchi is going to have it all his own way in that VR46 Ducati garage this year, because the Giannantonio feels like he's got a big point to prove. It looked like he was going to be discarded by Ducati throughout much of last season, last 6 or 7 Grand Prix. He was as good as Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin were in terms of scoring points for the championship. So he could be one of the surprise packages of the season, a more competitive bike. But I expect both of them to be fighting for the podium in a bunch of races this year.
Jorge Fabio Di Giannantonio finished last year in incredible form for a man that, I mean, when the season finished officially, wasn't on the grid for this year and now looks to be a real threat for the podiums and race victories. I mean, just how impressed have you been with the development and the progress he's made? And is he potentially one of your big sort of potential surprises of the upcoming season?
Yeah, for sure. Dija was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, surprise last year, because nobody expected, even maybe himself, that he was able to win one race like he did last year in Qatar. Many podiums, some pole positions. His progression from the middle of the season till the end was just unbelievable. He just clicked his mind and his confidence with the bike, and his results improved like a day at night. So yes, this demonstrates that you can never say any of the riders in MotoGP they are bad riders. They all can in some moment of their career demonstrate that they are very competitive. And this also shows that Ducati bike works for everyone, because apart from Luca Marini, who make even pole positions and podiums, but he was not able to win any race, maybe because bad luck. The riders won with Ducati. Even Zarco finally won in Phillip Island. So that demonstrates that this Ducati can be a winner bike with everyone, all the riders. Ducati was very good in the last years in the market area, signing very talented and young riders to be with. So they have 8 riders that all of them can win races and be very competitive. So they have the best bike and one of the best riders on the grid.
Jorge, I know you need to go. Just quickly, before you do, we need your big preview, big predictions, your top 3 in the World Championship this year, and one name that you think people need to keep an eye on.
Oof, this is difficult. This is the most difficult part.
Always.
MotoGP became every time more difficult to predict. But if I have to choose one, and this is my preference and the one who would like to win, this is Jorge Martin, no? Because he deserves, as talent as a quick he is, he deserves one world title, and hopefully he will find the zen state that give him this last step that he needs, no? But of course he will not have the easy life, and I will put Pecco as runner-up and Marquez as the third position.
Jorge, thank you for your time. Enjoy the season. I'm sure we'll catch up throughout it, and I hope it's a good one for everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, guys. See you soon.
Great to be able to chat away with Jorge Lorenzo. No, I said Jorge Martin then. Jorge Lorenzo, of course. Martin is picked for the World Championship. We'll continue our big preview, touching on KTM and Aprilia in a second with Bertie. But first, with the season around the corner, make sure you download the new MotoGP app. You can watch every session, interviews, highlights. You can get live timing, push notifications to remind you of when each session is going to start, and to be made aware of all the big breaking news stories, of which there are going to be plenty. Let me guarantee you that in 2024. So if you haven't already, on both iOS and on Android, go and download the MotoGP app. Right, let's see what you guys at home have been saying so far. Let's have a quick look. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure you put your comments in the chat and any questions that you might have for Bertie as we go throughout the show. But before we hear what you guys at home have said, let's go to KTM. And this is a massive year, I feel. Of all the teams, of all the factories, KTM is the one that stands out for me, Bertie, because they make no secret of the fact that they put a lot of investment in. They try and push the boundaries with that carbon chassis last year, with the partnership that they've got with Red Bull Advanced Technologies, of course, part of the Formula One outfit. But not to win a Sunday Grand Prix last year, I'm sure will sting. And they will want to be able to take the fight to Ducati this year. A big year ahead for them.
Yeah, I mean, every year in MotoGP is massive, Jack, but you're absolutely spot on. I think there's a lot of eyes on KTM this year because, as you mentioned, we know that there's so much money pumped into that project. KTM are incredibly ambitious. I remember when they first introduced the project at the Red Bull Ring in Austria back in 2016. They're not here to make up the numbers. They're here to win, and they've done it in every single discipline in the off-road sector, in the Grand Prix paddock on a regular basis. But as you mentioned, Jack, I mean, winless in 2023, blew a great opportunity for that historic first 1-2 in Valencia at the back end of last season. You have to say, all the noise at the moment that are coming out of KTM smack of nothing but positivity, that they have closed the gap to Ducati, but the proof will be in the result sheet and the stopwatch in a week's time. I mean, Brad Binder, you know, a lot of people think that he could be a dark horse for the championship. I really would like to see Brad winning 3, 4, 5 proper dry Grand Prix this year if he is to get himself in that sort of elite category. But as I mentioned, you know, KTM have got a very experienced factory team. Binder doesn't also have to worry about the distractions of contract talk, the media constantly asking him about the future because we know he's tied up, signed and sealed on a future contract. Jack Miller looked like he was very, very happy with the progress that the bike had made in winter testing, particularly with the electronics in terms of rear time management, particularly with electronics in terms of engine braking, which is not good for us, not good for the fans, because we love that sort of sideways speedway style, don't we, from the factory KTMs. But we might be seeing a little bit less of that, but they're not going to care one jot because they're here to win. The KTM slogan is they're ready to race. Well, we'll find out next week, won't they? But yeah, this does feel like it's going to be a big, big year for KTM because, as we said, they're not here to make up the numbers. And going throughout last season, not winning, you hit the nail on the head, Jack. That would certainly have stung back in Mattinghofen.
And you feel as though with their two riders, their two profiles, their two characters coming into the year, maybe a few people within the media already questioning Jack Miller's place in that squad for next year with the arrival of Pedro Acosta, and for Brad Binder as well to have finished the year in the manner that he did with a few big mistakes costing him massively. Those are two guys that I imagine quite like being told they can't do something, and they normally don't need extra fire in the belly, but if it's there to be taken, then they'll definitely take it.
Yeah, I think if you put Binder and Miller up against the wall, they're gonna come out swinging, aren't they? The pair of them, they know the significance of this year. They know that they've got so much clout behind them, just the technical backup. We know that KTM in recent years have poked a lot of Ducati talent. You know, Binder clearly has got phenomenal speed. There's just a few mistakes that can creep in here and there. We saw it twice, didn't we, in Aston with the exceeding track limits. We saw it when he's in that amazing fight with Pecco and Jorge in Buriram. A golden chance to end that winning duck in Valencia. So I think, you know, he's got to polish up a couple of aspects of his game this year, Binder. But if the bike's there, and with that extra experience, I think Brad, as he showed last year, is going to be one of the few guys that can muscle into that big Ducati fight. Because let's be honest, I mean, if Pecco, Martin, Marquez, Marc Marquez, well, actually any Ducati rider finishes, it's going to be incredibly hard to beat them. So anybody that's sticking their nose in that fight is doing an exceptional job. I just think the way that Ducati have come out at the start of winter testing, and okay, yeah, I know people say, well, winter testing is one thing, racing is another, but it does look like 2024 for me will be again difficult for KTM to win the championship. That's not saying that they can't, of course, but I just think Ducati still have got the superior advantage from a technical perspective. I think Binder's talent's on a par with some of those Ducati guys, and you mentioned Miller, Jack. I think every year we come into a contract year, the name that everybody talks about being one of the most vulnerable is Jack, and it must be so hard for him to sort of brush that off and not think about that. But that's what he has to do. I think Francesco Guidotti talked about in pre-season saying, Jack's got to just ignore all that and just focus on his own job. Of course, that talk is inevitably coming from the fact that KTM have a certain hot rookie in their independent team who's not going to be wanting to be hanging around in their independent team for too long. But yeah, big year for Binder, for Miller, and for KTM. And I'm expecting great things from all three of them, to be honest.
Yeah, for Brad in particular, I think it's sixth, then fourth last year in terms of his progression in the World Championship. I mean, you just have to look at those numbers and say that the sole target this year is to break into that top three in the World Championship, which is easier said than done. I've gone down that route a couple of times already, Bertie, this year, of going, well, if such and such will go well as long as, well, Enea Bastianini, Alex Marquez, Marc Marquez, Aleix Espargaro, the list goes on. You need a few people to have a bad day, but that's just what it's like in MotoGP at the moment. So from KTM to the other side, and GasGas. And it was a frustrating year for GasGas last year, finishing bottom of the team's championship in 11th, of course, wasn't helped by the big injury issues for Pol Espargaro and Augusto Fernandez in his first year. But now, as you can see, the arrival of a pretty exciting rookie, arguably the most exciting rookie since Marc Marquez's arrival 11 years ago. The big question on everyone's lips, and the one for you guys at home, will Pedro Acosta break Marc Marquez's record? He has up until the German Grand Prix, the summer break, 10 races to win a Grand Prix and become the youngest ever Premier Class race winner. What do you guys at home think? Yes, will he do it? No. Will it come too soon? Bertie, what do you think? I mean, I personally think that he might have every chance. As ever, you need a bit of luck to go your way, but from what we've seen in pre-season, I don't think he's going to be a million miles away.
I couldn't agree more, Jack. I mean, already after, 3 or 4 tests, he looks like a guy that's been on a MotoGP bike for 10 years, not less than 10 days. I mean, even in Valencia, the way that he just got on that RC16 and clicked with it immediately. A couple of KTM spies told me after that first test that in 3 corners in Valencia, he was as fast as Brad Binder, which is just absolutely astonishing. There is just something special about this kid, isn't there? There is this vibe that we haven't really seen since, as you mentioned, Jack, Marc Marquez stepped into MotoGP back in 2013. I think Pit Byra in the KTM team launch said they've got themselves a diamond here. And he doesn't look like a rough diamond that really needs much polishing either, does he? I mean, he's hit the ground running. You listen to the comments of some of the MotoGP riders who've seen him out on circuit in Malaysia and in Qatar, and they say he's running the perfect lines. He's laying the braking markers. He's got a MotoGP riding style already. He's fitted this category like a glove. And I'm not going to be betting against him, Jack, breaking that record of Marc. As you mentioned, he's got until the Sachsenring to do it in Germany. There's just so much to like about this kid. And I say kid because we have to remember he's still only 19 years of age. I'm not being disparaging when I refer to him as a kid. He's 19 years of age, already a 2-time world champion. We're expecting great things. We're expecting special things. And I think that's exactly what we're going to get. The shark is smelling blood in MotoGP. He's swimming with the big boys now. And some of them have got to be worried. I mean, we've heard some comments from the riders. They think that he'll be fighting for victories this year. Can't wait to see Pedro Acosta and how his evolution is over the course of this season, because it will be spectacular, I'm sure.
Well, the guys at home, maybe not as confident as we are, Bertie. 30% of you think that he is going to get the job done and win a race just before the summer break to break that record, but 70% not fancying him to do it. Well, we'll have to wait and see. One thing that, from hearing the team speak off the record, Pedro has been wanting to take some electronics away. He's wanted to have more and more feel in his right wrist. And whenever you hear people talking about Pedro, the comparisons almost immediately go to Casey Stoner and the talent that he had. And apparently there's quite a few similarities in the way in which they're able to adapt and B, ride the bike as well, which if you've been compared to Stoner, then you're not doing a bad job.
Yeah, that is a heck of a compliment, isn't it? I mean, Simon Crafer, I think, was out in the Sepang test, wasn't he? And was watching Pedro out on circuit at turn 3 in particular, where Casey was so special, sliding the Ducati and the Honda through there. And he said, Simon, that it looked like it was Casey Stoner back in his pomp, which is a heck of a compliment. But it just shows already the massive progress that Acosta has made. And as we said, Jack, he's a we've had the pleasure of interviewing him over numerous occasions. There's a proper, smart, old, mature head on young shoulders there. You know, he knows that this is going to be a very tough learning year. There's going to be some highs, there's going to be some lows, but he just seems to equipped to deal with everything and anything. Nothing seems to faze him. He's going to be a phenomenon of the future. And I think, was it Zarco said, didn't he, the last couple of years, I needed to get that first MotoGP victory done and dusted before Pedro comes into the class. Thankfully for Joanne's sake, he did it in Australia last year. But yeah, there's a very good reason why there is this buzz, why there is this vibe around Acosta, because he does look like he's got that little bit of something special, both on and off the track.
It's going to be a fascinating one to watch throughout the year. On the other side of the garage, there's really no getting away from the fact that it has been a very difficult pre-season indeed for Augusto Fernandez. Last in Sepang, then again in Qatar, after a really promising rookie year where you felt he could kick on this year and maybe challenge Acosta at some stages throughout the year and try and show him the way. It looks as though he's gone backwards, Augusto Fernandez, and difficult really to put your finger on exactly why. He's certainly got a big few opening rounds of the season ahead of him because he needs to turn things around quick.
Brutally tough pre-season, Jack. I mean, I've been quite surprised, as I'm sure a lot of people have, because I think with that year of experience under his belt, knows the team, knows the category, knows the bike, and we're told that the KTM, the GasGas, they have made clear steps in terms of performance. You know, what's got to be worrying Augusto is not the fact that, the position looks pretty bleak, but it's the fact that he's so far off in terms of the times as well, both in terms of race pace and the one-lap speed. I mean, what was he? I'm just looking at some notes here. He was 1.8 seconds away from the best time in Qatar, 2 seconds off the best time in Sepang. I mean, that's just nowhere. And also the fact that you've been pretty much humbled by a rookie teammate. Acosta has come in and shone, stolen the limelight already from him in that GasGas team. I think I read somewhere that Augusto wasn't ashamed to admit in Sepang that he was even actually already kind of looking at Acosta's data and taking some pointers from him. You know, what a compliment that is for the rookie when your more experienced teammate is poring over your data to find out what you're doing. I'm sure that's a lot to do with the fact that Acosta's got a great crew chief in Paul Trevathan. But yeah, it's been a horrible start to 2024 for Augusto, and that just can't continue, not in a contract year. You know, he has to find a way to up his game by a second and a half, because he was way off in winter testing. And, you know, we know KTM, they're not exactly famed for their patience, aren't they, with riders? They are pretty ruthless, and they will not be scared to wield the axe if Augusto's not performing.
Yes, Sepang in particular, the gap between first and 19th was 1.3 seconds, and the gap between 19th to Augusto in 20th for the full-time riders a further 3/4 of a second. A really worrying display. And as you say, given the fact there was just one rookie last year, one rookie this year, there is a a plethora of hotshot Moto2 riders who are absolutely chomping at the bit to get an opportunity in MotoGP. So fingers crossed for Augusto, he can turn it round pretty quick. Just before we have a quick break, a question for you from the chat, Matt. This one from Stumpy, wanting to know if 2024 is the best opportunity yet for a rider on a satellite machine to go and win the World Championship.
Yeah, 100%, because we know, particularly from a Ducati perspective, there is nothing or whatsoever that differentiates the bike that Jorge Martin is riding in Prima Pramac Racing and the bike that Enea Bastianini and Pecco Bagnaia race in the factory team. I mean, in everything bar status, really, Jorge is a factory rider, and we saw last year, didn't we? Jorge was a bona fide title contender. He's going to have gained so much experience from that last year. He's going to be a lot better equipped to deal with the pressure, because I think that was a factor, as Jorge Lorenzo touched upon at the start of the program. You know, towards the back end of the season, because it was a completely new scenario for Jorge. Yes, he'd fought for world titles in Moto2 and Moto3, but MotoGP is a completely different ball game. And I think Jorge admitted himself that, you know, he didn't particularly handle it as best as he could do, but so many positives and so many lessons learned for last year. So I just think with the level of support now that independent teams get, and you have to give a lot of credit to the manufacturers, but also to the rule book as well, the way that the MSMA and Dorna have worked to create a championship where pretty much, Jack, 15 of 22 riders going into the season have probably got serious aspirations of winning a Grand Prix. You know, if luck goes their way, if the cards fall in the right place, maybe every single rider could be on the podium this year. So the technical level is super, super high. And yeah, I don't think with any question whatsoever, an independent team could win the championship this year. And that's going to be mission A for Jorge Martin, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Right. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with you in around a couple of minutes' time to round off Aprilia, Honda and Yamaha. But if the big preview hasn't got you fully ready and fully prepared for the start of 2024, then there can be only one, which is available now on YouTube. Definitely will. And here's why.
These guys are not better than me.
I am the best.
We are lost.
We are not friends anymore.
Mi girano I coglioni.
Solo puede quedar uno 2023.
22 of the world's best and fastest riders, all with one big goal, to take the #1 from reigning world champion Pecco Bagnaia.
My dream is to continue winning titles for many years.
He has the best bike. The main rival is the #1.
He has the #1. I would like to be one of the greatest of the history.
20 rounds, 40 races, and a new thrilling era with the arrival of the Tissot Sprints.
Estamos de moda ahora, Rita.
Marco Bazzecchi is a MotoGP winner.
¿Cómo puede tener tanta mala suerte?
Break a contract.
I was not enjoying my life.
Tutto il dia sta fottendo volte dal cap.
The riders have a big ego.
Possiamo mettere ancora nervoso al socio.
Need to be more focused on his job.
This championship is very long, so wait.
Adesso come metterei presión.
What a way to bounce back.
A mí no me intimida.
Oh, they touched.
If I'm not safe in first row, where I have to start?
Se va a quedar dentro por mucho.
You never know what can happen.
Sta regalando punti a tutti. Via, prendeteli tutti.
Can you believe it? There is another massive plot twist.
There can be only one. Season 2 available now on YouTube. All 5 episodes with the behind-the-scenes look at what went down in 2023. I've said it a few times, but if you haven't watched it already, then please do ahead of the start of the season. It is a brilliant documentary series, and it features our very own Matt Birt as well. I have to say, Matt, I mean, the Oscars are next week, I've heard, and apparently there's a last-minute pull for you to win Best Actor.
Yeah, step aside, Cillian Murphy and Oppenheimer. I'm ready for the red carpet. Don't worry, I'm coming for you.
He's got the bow tie ready. He's going to fly straight from Doha to Hollywood to pick up his gong, and it'll be a deserving one as well. All right, let's kick off the second half of the show looking at Aprilia. And Aprilia are an interesting one. Really intrigued to get your thoughts on this because, firstly, for you guys at home, let us know if you think they have made a step from 2023 to 2024. Because in 2023, they were, when they were good, they were very, very good. But when they were bad, they were very, very bad indeed. So finding that level of consistency was key to them over the winter. Difficult to know after only 2 pre-season tests, but the timesheet seems to suggest, for Aleix Espargaro in particular, that they have made a step in the right direction.
Yeah, spot on, Jack. I mean, I think if you listen to Aleix Espargaro in particular, he's one of the happiest riders on the grid going into the first race in Qatar next week, because I think it was love at first sight when he first touched the RSGP 24 in Valencia. He felt some benefits. He was a little bit cautious there, thinking, well, okay, we need to find out how it works on different circuits, different conditions. And he's come out of Sepang and he's come out of Qatar looking he's buzzing. He's absolutely raving about the performance of the new bike. They've got the extra aero. The downforce he feels makes him faster in the faster corners. Maybe the bike's a little bit heavier, but he's willing to put up with that. He said, well, I don't care. Heavier bike, faster bike, doesn't bother me. I'll figure out a way to get around it. So Aleix was the only non-Ducati rider last year that was able to win more than 1 Grand Prix. And as you mentioned, Jack, I mean, I think he said himself, when our bike is good, it is phenomenal. When our bike is bad, it's absolutely atrocious. So they've got to find some middle ground this year, haven't they, where they can marry the speed that they have in some tracks with the consistency. And obviously what's going to be interesting to see as we move into the season is how the Aprilias are going to cope at the end of season flyways, where they tend to really go AWOL. Struggled in the past with hot conditions. We know they've tried to remedy that in winter testing, but it seems that they've done a lot of work back in the factory in Nawale over the winter. Certainly made Aleix happy. I mean, I think he said himself, he feels like he's riding better than ever. It's the best bike he's ever ridden in MotoGP, certainly the best Aprilia. So it seems like all the tools are there, you know, and I'm not too sure about this video though, you know, smooching on the dance floor with his bike there. I mean, I know that he loves the new bike, but that's maybe a little bit too far. But, you know, contract year, a lot of people saying at 34, is this Aleix's last year? But I don't get a sense or the impression from him that retirement is a word that's entering his mind at the moment. Because let's see. I think we have to move into the season with a little bit of caution about Aprilia, because they've been fantastic in testing. It's whether they can now deliver on that promise when it really matters.
Yeah, just under 2/3 of you at home thinking that Aprilia have made a step forward into 2024. And as we've mentioned a few times, a huge year for contracts. I get the sense that Aprilia is going to be a factory that we're speaking about a lot in that regard throughout the year. As you've mentioned, Aleix has made no secret of the fact that this might be his last year before he potentially looks at a testing role. Maverick Viñales, again, we asked the questions, can he deliver on the promise? Miguel Oliveira, we thought at the end of last year was a shoo-in to go into the factory team next year, but hasn't really had much of a pre-season to write home about. And we've got the likes of Bastianini, Quartararo, Bezzecchi, Martin, all wanting to be on a competitive factory bike next year.
Yeah, and this is not the Aprilia of 2017, 2018, 2019, Jack, is it? I mean, this bike now is a very, very attractive proposition. It is competitive to fight for wins and podiums. It's probably not that far away in the right hands, maybe being a championship contender. Now, Fabio Quartararo's name constantly crops up when you mention Aprilia in the future. I think Massimo Rivola himself has made no qualms about it. They're going to keep a very close eye on the contract situations of both Marco Bezzecchi and Enea Bastianini, because you'd guess that those two, if they get overlooked for the factory Ducati seat, may well be seeking a new ride somewhere else. So yeah, Aprilia could be in a pretty strong position if that bike in a race situation shows itself to be a title contender, a consistent race-winning package, there's going to be a fair old queue of managers and riders knocking on Massimo Rivola's door in the early part of the season.
In terms of Maverick Vinales, very quickly before we move on to Trackhouse Racing, I'm hoping for Maverick's sake, normally at the end of pre-season, we're speaking about how fast he is and how dominant he was. Hasn't been the case this year, so maybe it might be role reversal. Instead of testing world champion, he's actually fully legit world champion.
Oh dear, he's such an enigma, isn't he, Maverick? You just never know quite what you're going to get from the number 12. I mean, clearly he's blessed with so much natural talent, so much speed, but you do feel with Maverick more than perhaps anybody else on the grid that every piece of the puzzle has to fit absolutely perfectly for him to be fighting at the front. And if there's anything that just sort of deviates away from perfect, Maverick really, really struggles. I hope that he has a great year because he's a great character. I love speaking with Maverick inside the paddock, and when he's in the podium, the press conferences and the interviews, he's such a likeable character. But this is a results-driven business. He's had 2.5 years now on that factory Aprilia. Massimo Rivola said pre-season, we feel like he's ready to win. Well, it's time for Maverick Vinales to stand up and deliver, isn't it?
Yeah, difficult question coming in from the chat here, talking about the Aprilia riders hoping to control their emotions. I imagine that comes from Aleix last year. There was a few fire-ups from Aleix, to put it politely. But with Aleix, we know that that's just the type of character he is. He has to live everything in the moment, and sometimes it boils over, but that's what you get with him.
Yeah, and I think as well, that's just the way that Aleix Espargaro is. That's his natural persona, his natural character. And if you try to stifle that, if you try and take that away from him, then will Aleix Espargaro be the same rider, the same competitor? You know, this is the make of Aleix Espargaro. Some people love it, that he shows that great passion. Some people don't particularly like it. You cast your minds back certainly to those high-profile incidents where he had a bit of an anger management problem in India, and also, of course, in Qatar. You know, he was 10,000 euros lighter in his wallet when we were in Doha last November after that pretty controversial altercation with Frankie Morbidelli. But I think if you try and curtail any natural instinct from a rider, then you're taking away from what they potentially could be on the bike and on track. So I'm sure Aprilia management don't particularly like seeing their star rider losing his temper in front of senior management in the garage. And we have to point out as well, Aleix Espargaro in both cases was very, very contrite. He was very, very apologetic. But Aleix is a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve, you know, and this is elite level sport. It's a high pressure environment. These guys are risking life and limb every time they go out on circuit. So, you know, sometimes you are going to let emotion take over. So I don't think that's something that Aprilia really have to try and take out of Aleix moving forward, no.
And Massimo Rivola, of course, has kept the captain's armband on him. He's not been stripped of the captaincy just yet. So he will still go into the new year as the captain for the Aprilia squad. Right, let's talk Trackhouse Racing then. And Trackhouse Racing will, in fact, be a team, whether it be Miguel Oliveira and Ralph Fernandez, that you can see at MotoGP Premiere this year. Opportunity for you guys at home to head to motogp.premiere.com for unrivaled access, the opportunity to ask your questions in exclusive Q&A sessions with a whole host of riders up and down the grid, which sometimes are hosted by myself. So there you go. They're always well worth getting yourself along to MotoGP Premiere for those bucket list trips in 2024. To Trackhouse, a new team, bringing a new way of doing things to the paddock. They've already put their money where their mouth is. Miguel Oliveira upgraded to the 2024 bike. Ralph Fernandez will get that as we go throughout the season as well. Just very quickly on them, we can't forget the signing of Davide Brivio. We think managing to sign him and draw him away from potential interest from the likes of Honda and Yamaha has been, as was touted in the media, what a massive coup that is. It's exciting things ahead for this new outfit.
Yeah, huge excitement, Jack. I mean, it's always great to welcome a new team into paddock. You know, I think they're going to bring a bit of American pizzazz as well to MotoGP, which will not be a bad thing. They come in with a different perspective, and they are very, very serious about coming here to be successful and to be winning, as you just mentioned, Jack. They've upgraded this man on screen, Miguel Oliveira, to a factory bike. I think Miguel's had a little bit of a tough winter. The transition to the 2024 spec bike has not been as smooth as what he would have anticipated. You know, time will tell as Miguel spends more time on that bike if he's going to crack it. Ralph Fernandez, a nightmare start to winter testing, crashing on his third lap in Sepang on a damp circuit, the fracture in his hip, coming back super strong and impressive in Qatar, 5th place. And he loves that year-old 2023 RSGP. He says it fits his riding style, good on the brakes. So maybe we'll finally see Ralph Fernandez step up this year. But I think, you know, contract year, Jack, and of course, with 19 riders out of contract, there's going to be so much talk about the silly season. But personally, I think already we might have seen the signing of the season, and that is Davide Brivio being picked up by Trackhouse, because that is a genius move. Absolute masterstroke by Justin Marks, Trackhouse boss, to get Davide Brivio, because what he doesn't know about racing, you can write on the back of a postage stamp. You know, he's got such a proven track record, and he will bring so much to that team. A fantastic coup for Trackhouse Racing, and looking forward to seeing what they can deliver on track this year.
Yeah, so can I. I mean, for me, that Ralph Fernandez performance in Qatar was the performance of pre-season. To have missed all 3 days and then to jump up inside the top 5, brilliant from Fernandez. Finished 20th last year. Miguel Oliveira, who had his injury issues, 16th. We feel that there's bigger and better things to come for the pair of them. Right, moving on to our next factory, Yamaha, where, again, there are huge question marks about whether the former giants can get back to the summit of MotoGP 2021. They last won the World Championship with Fabio Quartararo, which really doesn't feel like that long ago. And of course, in a huge year for contracts, the big question is, will they be able to keep hold of the Frenchman going into 2025? What do you guys think at home? Will Fabio stick around, or will he look at potentially opportunities elsewhere? Yes or no? Let us know in the chat, and be interested to hear your opinions. We'll have a look in just a second. But for that exact reason, Bertie, having a competitive Yamaha M1 is going to be vital for Yamaha this year.
Imperative, absolutely crucial, because Fabio Quartararo, the last couple of years, Jack, we've seen him at close quarters. He's not been shy. He's not been scared to fire off a couple of verbal volleys about the performance or the lack of performance from the M1. We know they've got the concessions this year, which should be a big helping hand on the journey back to competitiveness. They've cherry-picked a couple of top technical talents out of Ducati. Max Bartolini has come in, who Fabio has spoken nothing but glowing terms about the job he's already doing inside Yamaha. But Fabio touched upon this at the end of last season. You're not going to go from 10th, 11th in the World Championship to winning the World Championship. It just does not happen. So it's a massive, massive year for Yamaha. Massive first 5 or 6 races, because that is when Fabio is going to want to see some progress, a tangible improvement with the bike, because if it doesn't happen, he's made the noise before. I think he will look elsewhere. So it's hugely significant at the start of the season for Yamaha. You've got to say, Fabio's race pace has looked super strong, as it always has done in Sepang and Qatar. But again, Jack, they're missing that 1 lap speed. They're missing it for the time attack. And what's good? What's the benefit of having great race pace if you're stuck on the 4th row or lower? So they've still got issues, and they have to get them ironed out, because Fabio Quartararo is a huge player in that market this year. I don't think he'll hesitate to jump ship.
Yeah, 75%, or it was. It's just swung. Not a live poll we can see. Now down to 69% if you think that Quartararo will stick around with the Iwata factory into 2025, with 31% thinking he'll look elsewhere. I think one thing we can be almost guaranteed of is that, given his performance in pre-season and the mutterings we've heard out of the Yamaha camp, that Alex Rins will be sticking around at Yamaha for more than just 1 year, because, of course, a difficult period to jump in at Yamaha. But despite his injury issues, and he is still struggling with that broken leg, well, it is now a recovering broken leg, but still not at 100%. Rins was pretty solid throughout pre-season.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're going to get from Alex, isn't it? He's always been kind of a a sort of solid rather than spectacular rider. He's just a guy that will quietly go about his business inside that Yamaha garage. He's not a guy that's going to get in there and start throwing his toys out of the pram. Certainly in front of the cameras. Big fan of Alex Rins, and I think he's going to be a real good signing for Yamaha. He's got a lot of experience on the Suzuki, brief experience on the Honda as well. Alex seems to be a very sensitive rider. He's going to be good for developing a motorcycle, and with the extra testing, with the helping hand from the concessions, Alex will be a key ally inside that Yamaha gadget. I get the sense already that him and Fabio are working much closer together than what Fabio perhaps was with Frankie Morbidelli, and that's only going to accelerate the development. You've got two riders that can put the rivalry aside to help develop the motorcycle. It can only be a benefit to Yamaha. So I think if Yamaha can find a competitive M1, then absolutely, without question, Rins will be right in the mix, because we know that Alex has got the talent.
I know Simon Crafar, whilst in Sepang, said that the team were really impressed with Alex's level of braking, already almost on a par with Fabio, and Quartararo is regarded as arguably one of the best brakers on the MotoGP grid. So Rins has made a pretty strong start to life at Yamaha, so it'll be interesting to see how they get on this year. As you rightly say, Matt, of course, now have concessions, as do Honda as well. HRC have a new lineup for 2024 with Luca Marini lining up alongside Joan Mir. For you guys at home, we want to know, when it comes to Honda, this is not the one for Fabio Quartararo. We know what you guys think. For Honda, in a second. We'll get to the poll in a second. Of course, Honda finished bottom of the Constructors' Championship last year. So we want to know, have they turned things around enough to be able to fight for victories in 2024? Yes or no? Of course, it's going to be a big leap for them to be able to suddenly start fighting for victories again this year. But on the timesheets, in Sepang in particular, Bertie, I think Joan Mir was at 1.1 seconds faster than he was able to do just a couple of months earlier at the Grand Prix. In Qatar, similarly again, they took a huge step forwards, but at the same time, every other factory has taken a step themselves. But at least for the first time in a long time, there's a bit more of a positive energy oozing out of the HRC factory.
Yeah, I think cautiously optimistic is how Honda can be going into the new season. I mean, they are a sleeping giant. They are coming off the back of an absolutely horrendous period. Like Yamaha, they're going to have to utilise the benefits of the concessions. It's one thing to get the concessions, but you've absolutely got to take advantage and use them to the maximum. There has been some encouraging signs. I think Joan Mir in particular, even on race pace in Sepang, was faster than what his qualifying time was last year. We know that this is a radically different Honda. I think this is we're seeing now the influence of Ken Kawauchi, the former Suzuki boss that went into HRC. It was always going to take time before we saw Ken San's influence. And I think now we're finally seeing that this is a very, very different RC213V. Improvements in aero, improvements in the rideability. I think the riders are saying that they're feeling the rear tyre more in the right hand. Improvements with the top speed of the engine. But again, listening to the comments of the riders, Jack, it's that same old issue for the Honda. They're lacking rear grip right here. Lacking rear grip in the initial braking zone, lacking side grip, and then they're certainly missing traction and acceleration grip, which is so fundamentally key now in MotoGP. So they're on that road to recovery, but it could be a long road. We've seen how long it has taken Ducati to get into this position of supremacy. So it's a long road back. But I've been impressed with the work that this man's done throughout winter testing. I think Alberto Buj, Honda boss, has said they've been immensely impressed with how analytical and methodical the working approach of Luca Marini is. I just hope for Luca's sake. I think he has stepped into HRC at a good time when they're clearly investing more money. They're more human resources, more financial resource. I just hope, because he said that himself, it's a dream to be in these Repsol colours. Well, we heard Joan Mir, we heard Jorge Lorenzo, we heard Pol Espargaro, we've heard Alex Marquez say that down the years, and we know what's happened to those guys. So let's just hope that Honda are on that road to recovery.
And good to see there's cautious optimism among the fans as well. 40% of you do think that throughout the course of the season, Honda will be able to fight for victories. As we said, they've got concessions, meaning that they have a few more aerodynamic updates. They're allowed to update the engine throughout the year. And they've got a load more testing opportunities as well. Some members of the media reporting that they're going to do as many test days as there are Grand Prix, up to 20 different tests already organised for the likes of Marini Mir and test rider Stefan Bradl. They're not messing about here, Honda. They understand that they're in sort of the proverbial, and they're looking to try and fight their way out of it.
Absolutely, Jack. Yeah, I mean, you get that opportunity to do the extra testing, so you have to take it. I mean, 22 private tests was the number that was being banded around, which is just incredible. I mean, it does show how serious they are about ending this wretched run. And, you have to say that Marc Marquez hasn't completely dismissed or ruled out maybe some kind of fairy tale return to HRC in the future, which, that the comments that Marc has made, I personally think that once he's ridden a Ducati, he's never going to want to jump off a Ducati for the rest of his life. But, that door being open, there's going to be people in HRC that are going to want to see Marc come back. I think it's going to be a very difficult year. We only have to look at the final standings in the Qatar test. The 4 Honda riders were unfortunately at the very wrong end of the standings, but they've got some experienced riders now. Taka Nakagami knows the bike incredibly well. Johann Zarco comes in with Yamaha and Ducati experience. Luca Marini also fresh off the Ducati. So they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. And Joan Mir, desperate to put behind a shocking season last year. So they're not lacking the riding talent, but they need to improve drastically technically, because we saw last year, not even Marc Marquez's great talent could mask the problems of the Honda. And it looks like some of those old issues are still there. They've made improvements, but I think the jury is still a little bit out on Honda's prospects for this year.
Yeah, last but not least, LCR Honda, new lineup for them as well. Johann Zarco and Taka Nakagami. Just on Zarco, firstly, when he signed with Honda, a few people in the media, and I have to say, me included, a little bit concerned on how these two would match together, given what happened when Johann joined KTM and the fallout that ensued there. But I think what we've seen, that this is a much more mature, a much more, I don't know what the correct word is, but as a Johann Zarco that understands the project and is ready to get his teeth into trying to help Honda get back to the top.
It really does seem that way, doesn't it? I mean, I've been reading a lot of comments from Johann over the period of the winter testing, and he's been a lot more positive about Honda, the way they're working and the direction they're taking them, what I think a lot of people thought they would do. I think it was very telling, actually. Taka Nakagami, I think he mentioned it very early on in the winter testing in Sepang, where he said for the first time since he's been part of the HRC stable, which was 2018 when Taka first stepped up to MotoGP, so it's a long time. For the very first time, the HRC engineers and all their riders, so Taka, Johann, Luca and Joan, sat together in technical meetings to throw around ideas, to discuss what their feelings were on the bike. And that's something that never really happened. It always seemed like it was a bit of a closed shop when Marc Marquez was there. Marc was perhaps wanting to keep a few secrets for himself, but that can only help and aid Honda get faster as well. Have to say, we didn't see it there, unfortunately, the pictures of Zarco on track. LCR have already won one championship this year. The best looking bike on the grid by a mile. That Castrol livery, which we're going to see, I'm sure, well, we will see it in Qatar, maybe we'll see it on screen shortly, it's just drop dead gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. I can't wait to see it in daylight, but under the night lights in Qatar, here it is now, with Johann taking the wraps off what is, without question, the most beautiful looking motorcycle on this year's grid. If it's as fast as if it's as good as it looks, then it's going to be a world beater, because it's just a beautiful design. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that thing deserves to be in Parc Fermé and on the podium more than once this year, if it is, as you say, if it's as fast as it does look good. On the opposite side of the garage, very quickly and finally, a big year ahead for Taka Nakagami, another rider whose contract is up at the end of the year, has been so unlucky not to have got that first MotoGP podium. It does an under-the-radar job, I think, for Honda, but always there's going to be the rumours as we go into the start of the year about the potential of the likes of Ayagur or Somkiat Chantra stepping up, especially given what those two are doing in pre-season testing at the moment down at Jerez. So it has to start well, you feel, Taka?
Yeah, massive year. I mean, they're always massive years, aren't they, at MotoGP? Trying to keep your place on the grid is one of the hardest tasks in racing. And when you're on probably the least competitive bike, it makes that task even harder. Nakagami has spoken well of HRC in winter testing, which is no great surprise. I mean, you know, you see pigs flying before you see a Japanese rider criticising a Japanese manufacturer and a Japanese motorcycle. But Taka has said that he feels that this RC213V has taken a step forward in performance. There are a lot of good things to work on. But it's like Mir said, you know, the guys that were on Hondas last year, Juan Mir and Taka Nakagami, both of them have said, yeah, we have made progress. The signs are encouraging. Problem is, we haven't got this rear grip issue sorted out. We haven't got the mechanical grip we want. We haven't got the electronics sorted out with the traction control. We're still getting far too much wheel spin. You know, that's where your Ducatis, your Aprilias and your KTMs have taken huge steps in recent years. They've got power to burn, but they can use that power. That's something that Honda have got to get their heads around very, very quickly, because if you can't come off the corner now in MotoGP, you haven't got to pray. You haven't got to hope in hell's chance of being competitive. But, you know, we have to say from both Yamaha and from HRC, there have been encouraging signs. And just for the show, just for the spectacle, we want Fabio Quartararo, we want Juan Mir, ex-world champions fighting at the front. We want Zarco, we want Marini, we want Alex Rins fighting at the front, because it means it's a better show for us, it's a better show for the fans. We don't want to see giants like Yamaha and Honda struggling, and hopefully they won't be for too long.
Then 22 riders, 11 teams, 5 factories, all previewed, and that leads us to one thing, Bertie, you're not getting away with it. Who's your prediction? Who's going to do the job?
I thought I was going to get away with that one. Oh dear. Yeah, as Jorge said, this is always the trickiest part of pre-season. I was going to just say, well, I'm going to go for a cop-out and say it'll be a Ducati all top 3. But I've got to say, I'm erring towards Bagnaia. I think Bagnaia is going to do it. I think he's going to be just the 10th rider in history to win 3 successive Premier Class titles. The way he's performed, the way he's tackled pre-season has been incredible. As we said at the start of the program, he looks fantastic, tough to beat. And then I'm really torn actually between Martin and Bastianini. I think if Enea is back to his best, I don't know, I've just got this sneaking feeling that Enea will make less mistakes than Jorge. I don't know why I say that, because they're both exceptionally talented riders. But I think I'm going to go Bagnaia, the Beast, Martin, my top 3 in the championship, with Marc hot on the heels of those two in second and third. And can't wait, I've got to say, I know we keep banging this drum, but I'm just so excited to see what Acosta is going to do this season, because he's going to ruffle a few feathers, not just in KTM, but throughout the whole grid as well. Jack, it's all set up, isn't it? It's the 75th anniversary year. We've got the best riders, the best bikes. I know we say this every year. It's the strongest grid we've had in history, but I don't think that is an exaggeration. Just want to get the bags packed, mate, and get on the plane to Doha now.
Absolutely. Cannot wait for it. I'd go along with that. This is as excited for a MotoGP season as I have been for a very, very long time. Just so many storylines everywhere you look. And now I'm chomping at the bit to try and get some answers to some of those storylines. Just before we go, it was this Roopjot. Quick question. Which bike would you like? Would both of us like to ride? I'm going to be honest, Roopjot. I'd go for a Red Bull Rookies bike, because I really don't fancy myself on a Ducati GP24. I have not got the skill or the talent to be able to throw my leg over one of them.
Yeah, I think I'd go for a Lacia Spargaro's push bike. I think that's my level. I was asked this question once before, and I think actually, what I can't remember what my answer was. I think it was probably the first ever Honda 4-stroke, the 5-cylinder MotoGP bike, because that was just a beautiful piece of kit. Exotic engineering, a V5 in MotoGP. It sounded amazing. It looked amazing. It looked aggressive. It was an incredible winning motorcycle as well. I think the likes of Valentino Rossi, though, and other riders that were on that bike just had a tad more talent than what I've got in this right hand, that's for sure.
Mate, I know for certain that our ambition would far outweigh our talent if we were to jump on one of those bikes. So we'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. But as I said, looking forward to catching up with you next week in Qatar, mate. I don't think the fans are going to be disappointed this year. MotoGP is going to be back bigger and better than ever. Make sure you're glued to your sofas throughout this year because it is going to be spectacular. 29th season for me, and I don't think I've ever been this excited going to the first Grand Prix. It's going to be electric. Get me on the plane now. Come on.
Bertie, thank you for your time. Appreciate it as ever. Looking forward to seeing you next week, mate.
Take it easy, Jack.
Pleasure. Great to be able to chat away with Matt Birt and bring you the big preview. If you're just joining us now, we had Jorge Lorenzo for the first half hour, 40 minutes, as well as he went through all 8 of Ducati's incredible rider lineup, giving his thoughts on Enea Bastianini, Martin, Marquez, and told us who he thinks will be world champion this year. You can rewatch all of it on YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram, however you are watching it, to get yourself ready for the season kickoff this time next week. And what better way to get yourself ready or treat a loved one, family member, whoever it may be, than by heading to MotoGP Authentics for the very best in MotoGP memorabilia. Right, that is all we've got time for. Before we leave you, here is one last reminder of where you can find MotoGP this year. As we've told you, it all kicks off this time next week in Qatar, the opening weekend of the year, and it's full throttle from there. A weekend off before we head to Portugal, then we'll be across to Austin for the America's Grand Prix. And what a run of races this is. Jerez, the Spanish Grand Prix, one of the real jewels on the calendar. Le Mans, where we had a record-breaking attendance last year. The Catalan Grand Prix. Can Marc Marquez win his first home Grand Prix since 2019? We'll find out. The 5-year wait goes on. Mugello, of course, needs no further introduction. That is going to be a belter, as it always is. A first ever trip to Kazakhstan. Then we go to the Cathedral of Speed in Assen, and there'll be another bumper crowd of over 100,000 people on race day at the Saxon Ring. Before then, we can have a breather and enjoy a little bit of rest, a little bit of sunshine, and recap what is going to be an electric opening half to 2024. A huge thank you to all of you who have watched from the start of January all the way through to now 12 different live streams, bringing you coverage of all 11 MotoGP teams' presentations. We've spoken to all 22 riders live. Thank you to all of the guests from different broadcasters, to our own here at MotoGP, and thank you to the guys in the back as well who've done a brilliant job producing these shows. It's been an absolute joy, an absolute honour to bring you this coverage. And now, the good news is, although I'm sad that it's finished because it's time to go racing. Tune in for the Qatar Grand Prix this time next week as MotoGP 24 finally gets underway.